The Texas sun burned hot over the endless plains, stretching across miles of dust, cacti, and dry wind. Near the edge of an old cattle trail stood Hannah Brooks, the tallest woman anyone in 3 counties had ever seen. Standing at 7 feet and 3 inches, she was a mountain of strength wrapped in soft loneliness. Her shoulders were broad, her hands calloused from years of working cattle and fixing fences, but her eyes, deep blue and tired, held the sadness of someone who had long given up on being loved. The townsfolk called her Big Hannah, sometimes kindly, sometimes mockingly. Children would stare when she walked into town for supplies. Men whispered and laughed behind her back, saying no man could handle a woman like that. Hannah heard them all, even when she pretended not to. She lived alone on her family's old ranch, the Brooks Range, which had fallen quiet after her father passed away. Every morning, she rose before dawn, feeding the horses and mending the corral. Every night, she sat by the porch, staring at the horizon as the sun sank, wondering if life would ever be more than chores and silence. One dusty afternoon, the rumble of hooves broke her routine. A rider approached, a young man, lean and sunburned, wearing a hat that shaded kind eyes. He rode up slow, tipping his hat politely. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady. "Name's Jack Miller. Heard you might need a hand with the stock. I'm good with horses." Hannah blinked, surprised. No man had willingly come to her ranch in years. "You can try," she said cautiously, her voice low and husky. "But the work's tough, and the pay's small." Jack grinned. "I ain't afraid of either." And just like that, he was hired. Days turned into weeks. Jack worked hard, never complaining, never treating her differently because of her size. When he first saw her lift a full hay bale like it was a pillow, his jaw dropped, but instead of fear, he felt admiration. She was magnificent, like some wild creature carved from the land itself. In the evenings, they'd sit on the porch, sharing stories. Jack talked about drifting from town to town, trying to find a place he belonged. Hannah talked about her father, the ranch, and how she never fit anywhere, not in town, not among people. Jack would listen, really listen, his brown eyes warm and kind. And when he laughed, she couldn't help but smile, a small, rare thing for her. For the first time in years, the silence of the ranch didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. Still, Hannah reminded herself not to hope. Men came and went, she was too big, too different. But as she watched Jack work in the fading light, shirt damp with sweat, smile easy and honest, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A spark. And though she tried to hide it, her heart had already begun to change. The next few weeks brought changes Hannah could hardly believe. The ranch, once echoing with the sound of nothing but creaking wood and wind, now had laughter in it. Jack's laughter. He whistled when he worked, sang when he saddled the horses, and sometimes talked to the animals like they were his old friends. Hannah found herself smiling more often, something she'd almost forgotten how to do. Jack didn't seem to notice her height or strength the way others did. Where the townsfolk saw something unnatural, he saw someone remarkable. When they rode out to mend fences, he didn't flinch when she hoisted a post into place by herself. Instead, he grinned and said, "You just saved me half a day's work, Miss Brooks." She'd smirk and roll her eyes, pretending his words didn't make her chest flutter. In the evenings, after supper, they sat on the porch watching the orange Texas sky melt into night. Jack would tell her about the towns he'd drifted through, the ranches that never felt like home, and the people who treated him like a hired hand, never like a man worth knowing. Hannah listened, her elbows resting on her knees, her deep voice quiet. One evening, she asked, "So what are you looking for, Jack? What keeps you moving?" He looked at the horizon, then back at her. "Maybe I'm looking for a place I don't want to leave." Her heart stumbled a beat, but she said nothing. It became a rhythm. Sunrise work, midday talk, sunset silence. A comfortable routine that made each day lighter. But somewhere between the laughter and the quiet, Hannah felt something else, fear. Fear of losing what she'd found. She reminded herself Jack would leave someday. They all did. Still, Jack had a way of breaking through her walls without even trying. One afternoon, when a thunderstorm rolled in, they took shelter inside the barn. Rain hammered the roof, thunder growled like the sky was angry. Jack leaned against a post, wiping water from his face, and laughed. "You know," he said, "you're taller than any man I've ever worked for, but you've got the gentlest hands I've seen." Hannah blinked, flustered. Gentle. These hands could crush wood. Maybe, he said, stepping closer, but they've been building, not breaking. The air between them grew still. The scent of rain and hay filled the barn. Jack's eyes softened as they met hers, and for a moment, she forgot how different they were. He reached up, brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. She turned away quickly, heart pounding. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Why not?" he asked, voice low. "It's the truth." For the first time in her life, Hannah didn't feel like a spectacle. She felt seen. That night, long after the rain stopped, Hannah lay awake staring at the wooden ceiling. Jack's words echoed in her mind. "Maybe I'm looking for a place I don't want to leave." And though she tried to push the thought away, deep down, she hoped that place was her. Autumn settled over the Texas plains like a soft blanket. The heat faded, the skies deepened, and the wind carried a cool, golden stillness. Hannah and Jack's days grew slower, quieter, yet every passing hour seemed to pull them closer. They didn't need many words anymore. A glance, a smile, or a shared silence by the fire spoke enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of red and amber, Jack found Hannah sitting by the corral, lost in thought. Her hands rested on her knees, her eyes fixed on the far hills. He could tell something weighed on her. He leaned against the fence beside her. "You've been quiet today," he said gently. "Something wrong?" Hannah's jaw tightened. "Just thinking. About." She hesitated, the wind tugging at her long braid. Finally, she said, "About people like me. How they don't belong anywhere." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" She laughed bitterly. "Look at me, Jack. 7 feet tall, big as a barn, hands like a blacksmith. Men look at me and see a freak. Women look at me and see a warning. Even when I was little, the preacher used to say I was made wrong." She turned to him, her eyes glistening. "You don't understand what it's like to be seen as something unnatural." Jack's voice was soft but firm. "I understand more than you think." Hannah shook her head. "You don't, Jack. I'm not like other women. I can't have what they have. My body." She stopped, her throat tightening. "The doctor once told me I could never carry a child. Said I was too big, that something inside me wasn't built right." Her voice cracked. "So even if someone did want me, which they don't, I couldn't give him a family." For a long moment, Jack said nothing. The wind whistled softly through the corral posts. Then, slowly, he stepped closer until he stood in front of her. "Hannah," he said, his voice steady, "you're not broken." Her eyes met his, uncertain, almost angry. "Don't say that. You don't know. I do." His tone deepened. "Because what you call broken, I call beautiful. You've worked this ranch alone. You've lived through pain that would have crushed most men. And you still stand." He reached for her hand, her enormous, work-rough hand, and held it tightly in his smaller one. "That's not broken. That's strength." Her breath trembled. "Jack," he smiled softly. "And for the record, I don't give a damn what any doctor said. I didn't come here looking for a woman to bear children. I came here, and found someone worth loving." Hannah's heart stuttered. Her mind screamed to push him away, but her soul leaned closer. Tears filled her eyes as he brushed his thumb over her hand. In that moment, the ranch, the world, everything else disappeared. The sun sank behind the hills, the last light fading into dusk, and for the first time in her life, Hannah let herself believe she might be enough. Winter swept across the plains, wrapping the Texas land in a blanket of frost. The mornings were colder, but the little ranch cabin felt warmer than it ever had. Inside, Hannah and Jack shared a life that no one in town would have believed. He stayed, through the storms, through the silence, through every look the world gave them. They worked side by side, their rhythm perfectly in sync. Jack would tease her for lifting barrels he could barely move. She'd laugh and call him tiny, though he knew she'd never met anyone who made her feel so safe. Nights were spent by the fire, his arm resting on her leg as she mended his shirt, her massive fingers gentle as silk. But beneath the peace, something stirred, a secret neither had spoken aloud. One morning, Hannah didn't come down for breakfast. Jack found her sitting on the bed, pale and shaking, clutching a small folded letter from the town doctor. He knelt beside her. "Hannah, what is it?" Her voice cracked. "Jack, I went to the doctor in town last week. I'd been feeling sick, tired. I thought maybe it was the cold." She handed him the paper with trembling fingers. "He said I'm pregnant." Jack's heart stopped. For a moment, the words didn't register, then his eyes widened, and a grin broke through. "Pregnant?" She nodded, tears welling up. "He says it's a miracle." But I don't understand. I wasn't supposed to. Jack cut her off by pulling her into his arms, his face pressed against her chest. You hear me, Hannah? You can. You did. For a woman who had lived her whole life believing she was unworthy, that moment shattered years of pain. Her sobs came hard and unrestrained, and Jack held her like the world depended on it. Months passed, and word spread across town. Some folks whispered, some laughed, some simply stared. But Hannah no longer cared. The shame that had followed her since girlhood was gone, replaced by the quiet glow of hope. When the day finally came, the storm outside was fierce, wind howling, lightning flashing, yet inside their small cabin, everything was still. Jack held her hand as she brought their child into the world. Her strength, once mocked, now saved 2 lives. When the baby's cry filled the room, Jack's tears fell freely. He looked at the tiny boy, so small, so fragile, resting in Hannah's enormous hand. The sight broke him open. He's perfect, Jack whispered. Hannah smiled through exhaustion, her eyes shining brighter than any sunrise. Do you still think I'm too big? She teased softly. Jack kissed her forehead. You're just the right size for my heart. Outside, the storm eased. The land grew still, quiet, as if the heavens themselves had witnessed something sacred. From that day on, people didn't call her Big Hannah out of mockery. They called her Hannah the Strong. And every time someone asked Jack how he ended up with the tallest woman in Texas, he'd smile and say, she may stand 7 feet tall, but her heart reaches higher than the sky.